ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another module of Agency Incubator. In today's module, we are moving on to week 4, which is obviously, finding leads, sourcing leads, organizing leads, setting up meetings, etc., etc. So first things first that we're going to talk about is foundations. And I just want to talk about some foundational things before we move into this week, before we get, right into the mix, right into, trying to set up meetings. And then, from there, closing new clients. So let's get straight into it. In today's teaching, we are going to go over the 4 guiding pillars of this week. Pillar 1, Pillar 2, Pillar 3, Pillar 4. Next, I'm going to be giving you a tool, which is the Outreach Tracker tool. And then I'm going to be showing you how to use that Outreach Tracker tool to actually then go ahead and refine your best medium, your best form of cold outreach. So first things first is you are selling the meeting, not the service, okay? And your entire pitch, when you're cold calling, when you're cold emailing, sending cold Loom audits, etc., the pitch is never the service, okay? What you are trying to sell is always just the meeting, okay? So before you start rambling on about your services, always remember that this is not what you are selling at that point, okay? What you are selling is just the idea of the meeting itself. So remember that, when you're on the phone cold calling, when you're emailing, when you're sending out cold Loom, you are not trying to pitch your service. You're not trying to justify your service. You're not even trying to tell them the price or even the ballpark of your service. All you are trying to do is sell the meeting, sell the idea of the meeting. So first hoop you have to jump over is, you have to sell the meeting and then you sell the service. Okay, let's get back into it. Now, in order, to sell the meeting, really what you have to do is you have to make it a no-brainer. And in order to do this, first things first is you need low commitment. And not low commitment from them, but you need to make it seem as though it's a low commitment thing, okay? Make the meeting this, sort of low commitment thing by telling them that, it's a quick X, and obviously that's a timestamp, and we're going to talk about that in a second. It's a quick 30-minute meeting, blah, blah. Right? And then you really want to frame it that there's only upside. So tell the client that no matter what happens in the meeting, it's a win, right? Something you might say is, look, either we move forward and I can start the process of adding a new dimension to your business by bringing in heaps of business through my service, or, you're going to walk away with a free consultation and you can take everything that I'm going to be showing you in this discovery meeting and you can just have your team apply it for you instead. Either way, there's no downside and only infinite upside for you here. Okay, this is really important because you need to understand from the business owner's perspective, they're just constantly calculating the value of their time. Their value, their time is important to them, and they're thinking, what is, they're just thinking it's going to be this crappy sales presentation where you're going to shout at them, and hopefully you're not doing that. And look, with the training in week 5, there's definitely no chance that will be the case. But as I said, you really want to frame it as this win-win. No matter what. Either they're going to come out, with a new, media partner, a new advertising partner that then is going to take their business to a new level, right, through the service that they're delivering for them. Or, they're pretty much just going to get this almost free consult, almost this free deep dive into where their business is right now, looking at their marketing strategy. And, even if they don't decide to move forward, they can still take that information and apply it. And that's totally free. So an entire win-win situation. So this is really the way you want to frame it to, the business owner or the gatekeeper, et cetera, if you're making cold calls, if you're sending a cold Loom, at the end of the cold audit, if you're messaging, et cetera, okay? Just only upside, total win-win situation, and make that clear. The next thing is timestamp. Okay, it's really good to put a timestamp on it and just get some minimum buy-in, right? I'll give you a perfect example with charity workers that stop me in the street. I've had it before with charity workers where they've stopped me in the street, or they've tried to stop me in the street, and I'm like, so sorry, no, I don't have time, blah 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 blah. And there'll be many different ways that they'll try to actually get me to stop in this street, hear their pitch, et cetera. The only time, and I even know that this is happening, and yet I still do. The only time that it ever works is when they're like, hey, literally, can I just get 5 seconds of your time? Or I swear this will only be 5 seconds. Tell me something, right? That's sort of that timestamp where I'm literally oh, okay, 5 seconds, right? Even though it's never is 5 seconds, right? It never is 5 seconds. So, to give you an example right here, we might say something along the lines to the client as, look, we both have busy schedule. This meeting will only take 30 minutes, but transform the next 30 years of your business. Sound good? Right? Or you might even downplay just how long 30 minutes is. You might even say something along the lines of, hey, look, I know we both have busy schedules. That's why this meeting is super short. It's only 30 minutes, but this thing will literally transform the next 30 years of your business, whether we decide to move together or you just take this information, run with it, and apply it yourself. Sound good? Once again, there we have timestamp. Like the funny thing is you could even say like 2 hours. Like the funny thing is you could literally even be like, yeah, this meeting, it won't take long. It'll literally only take 2 hours. Right? Like you can kind of downplay how long something is. And the thing is with 30 minutes, usually that gives enough flex for it to go to like 45 minutes. So I usually find that my discovery calls go to, and once again, I do all of my calls remotely. But even, with meetings before, I would frame it as a 30-minute meeting because most of the time it kind of runs over to 45 minutes anyways, and that's fine. Whereas if you frame it as a 15-minute meeting and it runs over to 45 minutes or an hour, that's not okay, and that's not fine. So let's get straight back into it. Next thing, and the next pillar of this week is money is in the follow-up only to set the meeting, right? And let me tell you what I mean by this, right? Because here's the common conception, the common thinking. Most people believe that money is in the follow-up when it just isn't, okay? Most sales experts think that, you have one call/meeting, they don't buy, then you pester them for the next 24 months trying to get them to buy something from you. It doesn't work like that. The money is not in the follow-up after the meeting. It's in the follow-up before the meeting. So let me tell you what I mean. All right. We are attempting to have a one meeting/call close, right? In my case, it's one call close, pretty much one call close. If it's an in-person meeting, one meeting close, right? You should be aiming to close and receive payment at the end of the first meeting together, okay? There's simply no reason that there needs to be 3-4 calls, follow-ups, etc. The thing is, if you have conveyed your value well enough, they'll usually make a decision on the spot. And occasionally they need to talk to business owners, and that does take some time. That's also why we always record calls, and if they do give that rebuttal, we instantly set the second meeting on the spot. To give you a perfect example, last Friday I had a 2-day training close, and then 2-day training close. So building out their webinar funnel over the space of 2 days. And then we're also running their ads for £4,800 a month, which is roughly around $6,200 a month. So, funnel build, as I said, I've told you guys this a few times, $25,000 is what I charge for funnel build at this current time. Probably when you're watching this, it's probably like $50K or $100K for 2 days. But in the space of 2 days, I just build out the entire thing. But yeah, that's £25,000, so $35,000. And then after that, as I said, they're becoming a client for $6,200. I'm converting from pounds, so $6,200 a month. Had the call on Friday. One business partner was there. Other business partner was abroad, tending to a family matter, which is unfortunate, and just genuinely could not make it on the call. The first business partner, he was literally like, look, it's a yes from me. But we just, I just need to make sure this other business is on board. So that's why, in that situation, I know that's not an excuse or anything. That's why I always make sure I record the calls, because that way I sent them the recording of the call straight after. So the business partner, once he dealt with his family matters, he could download that call or access that call and see exactly what we talked about. Right. So that's number one. And number two, I was like, all right, that totally makes sense. That's fine. I'm excited to move forward with you, but I obviously understand that, your business partner needs to, kind of sign off on this decision as well. When is your business partner back? And he told me the date that his business partner was back. And I was like, all right, awesome. Next day, literally, the business partner was back on, let's just say the 12th. I'm like, all right, awesome. So on the 13th, 5 p.m. British Standard Time, let's have a follow-up meeting. And then from there, we can get you onboarded. If the answer is yes, which, quite clearly it seems like 90% it is. And if the answer is no, then we can have a little discussion as to, why that is, and, how to make sure, find out how to make this work for both of us, right? That is an example right there where like I wasn't able to close it, in one meeting or one call, but immediately I set up the follow-up meeting, right, with the business partner there present as well, because I knew that was a close. I knew that wasn't a situation where I didn't convey my value. I knew that was literally just a situation where it's a big investment. They're literally spending in the first month over 40 grand with my agency. I totally understand that's a huge investment. So of course the business partner does need to be present for that. Okay. So moving on to the next thing. the nuance, okay? Where the money truly is in following up, leading to the meeting, okay? So you should be following up with leads all the time, trying to get them to set an appointment / meeting with you. This is super, super important and helps you get your numbers for meetings. So whether that be in person or online, the more meetings you have, more money you'll make. If they don't close on the spot, then they're probably not interested. Now you can swing back to them down the line, but remember, the most important thing is following up to set meetings with new potential clients. So I do believe that the money is in the follow-up, but it's not in the follow-up after the call, because the thing is, as I said, if you've had 2 meetings and they're still just haven't purchased or haven't decided to work with you, then that's something with you. You have not conveyed the value, or it's just a poor lead, or unqualified lead, etc., etc. And usually the thing is, if they're unqualified, they won't close on the first call. There'll never be a situation where they set up a second call with you, because they just know that the money is the issue. So yeah, remember that. There is so much value in the follow-up. Following up is so key, so important. But for me, following up is more important in order to set the meetings. After the meetings, it's not as important, because to me, the meeting really should be a yes or no type situation. It shouldn't be like this weird, for 3-4 months, you have to follow them up, try to get their business, because at the end of that meeting, with the script that you're going to receive, they should be so excited to work with you that the only answer is yes. And if the answer is no, as I said, you haven't conveyed the value, or they just don't have the money and they're just too afraid to say that. So yeah, please keep all this in mind. The money is in the follow-up in order to set the meetings. The money is in all of those, the clients and the leads that have picked up once or emailed once, but then it kind of, the interaction became dead, or, for whatever reason, that sales cycle kind of died. Reopen that sales cycle, right? Start a new sales cycle with them, okay? So the money is in the follow-up, but pre-meeting, in my opinion. So, as I said, the money is not on the follow-up, and this is available for download right below this video. The money is not on the follow-up after the meeting. It's in following up before the meeting. If you didn't close after one meeting, either it's a qualification problem or you didn't do well enough. More than likely, it's the second. Next thing is organization, okay? Now, scale. I've talked about this before, but when you're doing outreach at low level / volume, you can get away with just having everything on the notes section of your phone or your computer. But the minute that you scale your operation and start to do 50 or 100 cold outreaches a day, then you're gonna have a nightmare in terms of keeping relevant info on each client. So the next thing you have to look at is success, right? You are going to have a quantum leap in terms of your success when you organize your leads information correctly. First of all, collect the right information, organize the right information, and use that information correctly. Next thing is follow-up, okay? Make sure you have a real system in place that reminds you and keeps you, and keeps every sales process and every sales interaction at top of mind, okay? So we'll be setting up Pipedrive in just a few modules, so we'll have a central CRM hub as well as a way to assess our deals and make sure we're following up correctly. How many times have you had literally 12 deals in your head that you're thinking of, blah blah, and then they start to sort of fall off because you didn't set, say you got past the gatekeeper, or you got the gatekeeper on your side, but it literally happens that the business owner isn't in that day, or maybe the business owner's CFO, chief financial officer, or right-hand man is there, or right-hand woman, whatever is there, but the actual business owner isn't there that day. You should be following up. You should be getting the information as to when the business owner, he or she, will be there, and you should be following up on that day. And a lot of people, they just kind of store it here rather than having a real, sales CRM system, which is what Pipedrive is. That's literally, it has an app on your phone. You're literally gonna get notifications. You're gonna get reminders when it's time to, reopen that sales cycle and really re-engage with that potential lead. So, refining the system. So I've gone ahead and actually made this outreach tracker for you. This thing is the bomb. Once again, there's some dummy numbers in here, but we have this month by month view. Obviously this just gets pulled in from all this data here. And then we have the year view, right? So this is your year view. So you're literally gonna be able to see over the space of a year, how many attempts have you made? How many meetings have you set? Clients closed, revenue from those clients, attempt to meeting to client. And obviously, these numbers at the moment don't make any sense at all. And then increase, stable, decrease. Obviously, you guys have seen this similar sort of thing with the financial tracking sheet. But you can see right here, I've actually split up into cold call, cold email, cold messaging, cold audit, cold walk-in, and cold other. And you can change this to, you know, whatever your, like, let's say LinkedIn, right? For example, is another one right here you could put in. Or maybe, you know, if you really just aren't going to do cold walk-in, you know, you can change this one to LinkedIn right here. But what you're going to do right here is an attempt at a cold call is literally picking up the phone and dialing a number. It doesn't matter if you've dialed that number 10 times in the last week, okay? It's dialing a number. And then from there, it's meeting set, right? And then from there, clients close. So what I want you to do is keep track. You know, when you do cold calls, how many cold calls have you made? You know, and once again, that's you actually picking up the phone and dialing. And of that, how many meetings have you set? And of the meetings that you've set from cold calling, how many clients have you closed? And then from that, what revenue has that brought in? And it will give you at the bottom here, your attempt to meeting percentage and your meeting to client percentage, okay? And here, once again, it's the same thing for cold email, cold messaging, because the thing is, you know, for example, with cold calls, you might be getting, as an example, just purely as an example, you know, you might be getting, or let's just say cold emails. Hypothetically, let's say you're getting actually more meetings set, right, from cold email. But, or actually, you know, even just using these numbers right here, you can see, but like, imagine you set 10 meetings from cold calls, right? But you only close one client from cold call leads. And, you know, you set 5 meetings from cold email, but you close, you know, 2 clients. And then obviously your meeting to client percentage, you can see right here is 40% compared to 10% here. So the thing is, in that case, you might know that, you know, from cold email, you might get less, your attempt to meeting might be smaller, hypothetically. Like, let's just say this was like, you had to actually send out freaking 200 emails, right? Or let's just say something a little calmer. Let's go for even 100, right? So let's say you do 100 and you only set 5 meetings, right? But the thing is, out of 100 attempts, you still close 2 clients compared to cold calls where you made 100 calls, right? But you only close 1 client. But then again, you also have to look at it and you're like, okay, keep in mind, you know, I'm going to be showing you guys some automation hacks and tricks for, you know, emails, cold calls, voicemails, stuff like that, SMS. But, you know, you then that gives you some information, and you might look at, okay, does cold calling, for me to do 100 attempts at cold email compared to 100 attempts at cold calls, which one takes longer? You know, the thing is, if this takes, let's just say hypothetically, this takes 10 hours and this only takes 5 hours, even though your meeting to client percentage is smaller, right? Or sorry, your attempt to meeting percentage, right? Because let's see, you basically out of every cold call, every time you dial the number, out of 100 of actual times you dial the number, you get 1 client. And here, out of 100 emails you send, you actually get 2 clients closed, right? And let's say this takes you 5 hours and this takes you 10 hours. Then you can see they're kind of roughly on the same wavelength, right? But let's just say this takes you 5 hours and this takes you 15 hours. Even though the numbers are better, you're spending more time. So this is just a way for you really to assess your efforts, make sure that you're putting your efforts in the right place. And it'll take, this summary on the side will take all of this information right here and collate it on the side. My best recommendation is when you guys download this, obviously go ahead and clear all these values, right? You just go here, edit, delete values. And then here, obviously when you do type, you know, let's just say you close a client for like 2,000, whoopsie. Yeah, let's just say you close a client for like 2,000 a month, right? You can see right there, it'll come up as $. But yeah, if you want to do that, just literally press here, edit, delete values. And obviously then that'll give you a clear year view, clear month view, etc., etc. And all of these will come here, pull together on the side here to give you your summary. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the outreach tracker. There'll be a link for that right below this video. So once you've gotten some data, right? The thing is, in your niche, there'll be certain outreach methods that definitely work better than others, right? And kind of everyone will know that. That said, in the beginning, try to assess or try to try a bunch of different ones and make sure you have the data logged and tracked, right? This way you can properly assess which forms of outreach bring the best and the highest quality, which bring the highest quality meetings, which bring the highest quantity of meetings, and which one is generally bringing in the most amount of money. Because the other thing you might have to look at is, with this medium, I might be setting more meetings, but the actual retainer value that I seem to be able to get from these leads is lower than this one. So this one might, I might set less meetings in the same time that I set here, and I might close less clients, let's say over 1,000 attempts, right? Really stretching out that data point, but I'm closing higher quality of clients here. So then once again, you might look at that and be like, okay, this is my winner. This is the one I need to focus on. Now, once you've done that, you have to, once you found an outreach method that brings in clients the most effectively, it's time for you to refine your process with it down, right? It's time to squeeze as much efficiency out of that system as possible, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna go ahead and optimize, okay? Switch up your cold call scripts, your messaging templates, mix up your Loom audit lengths, rather than doing, a 15-minute or 20-minute one, try a 7-minute one, compare that to a 25-minute one, optimize the machine so you can get more results out from the same amount of time put in. And the last thing is be numbers orientated, because once you optimize the machine, you should be getting more and more data out. And the more data you have, the more you'll know how many calls, messages, emails, Looms, LinkedIn messages, etc., you have to execute on in a week in order to generate X amount of discovery calls, which historically, aka sales meetings, calls, etc., which equates to historically on average X amount of clients, and those clients on average equate to X amount of monthly revenue / retainer. Okay, this takes the guesswork out of the entire process. After 2 months, you're going to very quickly find out that you have to make X amount of cold calls, X amount of emails, X amount of Loom audits, X amount of messages on Facebook / Instagram. Whatever medium you found works best for you, you're going to find very quickly that, hey, I need on average this amount of attempts. I need to do it this amount of times in order to set this amount of meetings. And from this amount of meetings, I usually close this amount, and the client on average is worth this amount monthly, right? And through that system, if you know that on average you need to make, let's just say hypothetically, 100 cold calls in order to close on average a $3,000 a month client for your agency, and you're pretty sure that you can do, well, not pretty sure, but you can do 100 cold calls in a week, then that if you do 100 cold calls a week, over the space of 4 weeks, you should be adding an extra $3,000 a month, aka a new client every week. An extra $12,000 a month, a new client every week that's worth on average $3,000 to your agency. So that way, make 400 cold calls this month, 100 cold calls every week, and I would literally sign a new client on average, right? As I said, this takes the guesswork out of it entirely, okay? It's all a numbers game. So, ladies and gentlemen, the action step for today is to download the tracking sheet, okay? Download it, add it to your Drive, and make sure it's stored in your Agency Incubator Google Drive folder with everything else. The worksheets, the plug and play sheets, the tracking sheets, the printouts, etc. Okay, so once again, it's in the same way with sales, it's so important to be organized with your leads. It's exactly the same thing when it comes to your education and making sure that you squeeze out as much efficiency, as much value, and really just get the most from this program. So as I said, make sure you download that tracking sheet, add it to your Agency Incubator Google Drive folder. That should be broken up by weeks. And as I said, just make sure you're staying organized at this point in the process. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're excited for an amazing week 4, and I'll see you in the next module.